The kitchen smelled of garlic and herbs when I walked through the door that evening. My wife was humming, actually humming, as she chopped vegetables with a precision I hadn't seen in months. A bottle of expensive wine sat on the counter, the kind we usually saved for anniversaries. "You're in a good mood," I said, loosening my tie. She turned, her eyes bright with an excitement that made my stomach twist. "I have news. Remember Daniel? My ex from college." How could I forget? She'd mentioned him exactly 3 times in our 7 years of marriage, each time with a wistful tone that lingered too long in the air. "Vaguli, elite. Well, he's coming to town next Friday for a conference. Can you believe it? After all these years." She set down the knife and clasped her hands together. "I invited him for dinner. Here. I want to cook something really special." I felt the words hit me like cold water. "Here. Our home." Of course here. Where else would I invite an old friend? She turned back to her cutting board, dismissing my concern with a wave of her hand. "Don't give me that look. He's practically a VIP now, VP at some tech company in Seattle. It'll be nice to catch up." "We could all go out to a restaurant," I suggested carefully. She laughed, but it wasn't warm. "Don't be silly. That's so impersonal. Besides, I want to show off my cooking skills. Remember how he used to love my lasagna in college?" There it was, another memory of him, served up as casually as the vegetables she was chopping. Over the next week, our home transformed into a staging ground for this dinner. She bought new placemats, new napkins, even new candles. I watched her try on 5 different outfits Thursday night, each one more carefully chosen than what she'd worn to our last date night. "You're overthinking this," I said from the doorway. "I just want everything to be perfect." She held up a blue dress against herself. "Do you think this is too much? For an old friend? Probably." Her expression hardened. "You're being ridiculous. Why are you acting so insecure?" Maybe because my wife is treating her ex-boyfriend's visit like it's the social event of the season. "Oh, grow up." She tossed the dress on the bed. "This is exactly why I didn't want to make a big deal about it. You're overreacting." But I wasn't overreacting. I was watching. Watching her check her phone constantly. Watching her reapply lipstick 3 times before leaving for work. Watching our marriage take a backseat to someone who'd been out of her life for over a decade. Friday morning, she was up at dawn, cleaning corners of the house that hadn't seen attention in months. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through my own phone, making plans she knew nothing about. "I'll be home early to start cooking," she announced, already mentally absent from our conversation. "The dinner's at 7. Try to be on your best behavior, okay?" "Don't worry," I said, taking a slow sip of coffee. "I'm inviting someone too. To even out the numbers." She paused, her hand on her car keys. "Who?" "A friend. You'll meet them tonight." Her eyes narrowed. "What friend? I don't want this turning into some weird double date thing." "It's not. Just someone who I think would be very interested in meeting Daniel." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. After all, if we're having a reunion dinner, why not make it memorable? She stared at me for a long moment, trying to read my intentions. But I'd learned from watching her all week, sometimes the best secrets are the ones kept closest. "Fine. Whatever. Just don't embarrass me." She left in a huff, the door closing with more force than necessary. I sat alone in the kitchen, the morning light streaming through the windows, and pulled up the messages on my phone. It had taken 3 days of digging through social media, 2 carefully worded emails, and 1 very revealing phone conversation, but I'd found exactly who I needed. Tonight wasn't going to go the way my wife planned. Tonight, the truth was coming to dinner. The afternoon crawled by at my office, each minute stretching like taffy. I kept checking my phone, rereading the confirmation message, "I'll be there at 7:15. Thank you for reaching out. I think we need to talk." My coworker, Jake, noticed my distraction. "You okay, man? You've been staring at that spreadsheet for 20 minutes without typing anything." Just thinking about dinner tonight, I said, which was technically true. Hot date with the wife. Something like that. What Jake didn't know, what nobody knew except me and my surprise guest, was that I'd spent the week doing detective work. It started innocently enough, curiosity getting the better of me. I'd looked up Daniel on LinkedIn, found his impressive profile, his company headshots with their fake corporate smiles. But then I'd noticed something in the comments under one of his posts. A woman, tagging him with heart emojis, calling him my brilliant fiancé. Her profile was public. Her name was Rebecca Chen, a marketing director in Seattle, beautiful and accomplished, with photos of her and Daniel scattered throughout her feed, including one from just 2 weeks ago, captioned, 3 months until I marry my best friend. That's when the real digging began. I'd created a fake account, nothing traceable to me, and sent Daniel's company a general inquiry that happened to mention his upcoming trip to visit old friends. The assistant who responded had been chatty, mentioning his full schedule, including a private dinner engagement Friday evening. Then I'd done something that would either save my marriage or end it. I'd reached out to Rebecca. The email was simple, professional, concerned. I'm the husband of an old college friend of Daniel's. She's planning a dinner for him this Friday at our home. I thought you might like to join us as a surprise for him. Based on your social media, it seems you two are quite serious, and I'm sure Daniel would love to have you there. Her response came within an hour. Daniel never mentioned visiting an ex-girlfriend. We should talk. We did talk. A long phone conversation where puzzle pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Rebecca knew about the trip, but Daniel had said it was purely business meetings and conference sessions. No mention of a cozy dinner with an ex. No mention of my wife at all. I don't want to assume the worst, Rebecca had said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. But Daniel's been distant lately, secretive with his phone. My wife's been the same, I'd admitted. Maybe we're both paranoid. Or maybe we're both right to be concerned. Now, at 5:30, I left the office early. The drive home felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body. The streets passed in a blur of streetlights and stop signs, each one bringing me closer to a confrontation that would change everything. I arrived home at 6 to find my wife in full preparation mode. The house smelled incredible, roasted garlic, fresh bread, something rich and Italian bubbling on the stove. She'd changed into the blue dress, the one she deemed maybe too much. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled in loose waves that must have taken an hour. She barely glanced at me when I walked in. You're late. Your friend, whoever they are, they're still coming. Wouldn't miss it, I said, heading upstairs to change. Well, hurry up. Daniel texted, he'll be here at 7 sharp. I paused on the stairs. He has your number. Of course. How else would we coordinate? She said it like I was stupid for asking, but I saw the faint blush on her cheeks. In our bedroom, I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I'd created. Screenshots of text messages I'd found on her iPad when she'd left it unlocked 3 days ago. She thought I didn't know her passcode, but I'd watched her type it in 100 times. The messages to Daniel started 3 months ago. Found you on LinkedIn. Can you believe it's been so long? Remember that weekend we spent in your dorm? I still think about it sometimes. My husband doesn't understand me the way you did. And the most recent, from just 5 days ago, I can't wait to see you. I've been counting down the days. There's so much I want to say in person. His responses were friendly but cautious, never quite matching her enthusiasm. Reading them was like watching someone throw themselves at a door that wouldn't fully open. I printed the most damning ones, folded them carefully, and put them in my jacket pocket. Downstairs, the doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. I heard my wife's sharp intake of breath, the quick click of her heels on hardwood as she rushed to check herself in the hall mirror one last time. I came down the stairs slowly, watching as she opened the door with a smile that was too bright, too eager. Daniel, you made it. He was tall, conventionally handsome, wearing an expensive suit. The kind of man who looked good in corporate headshots. He held a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers, yellow roses, not red. A careful choice. It's great to see you, he said, his smile polite but measured. He handed her the flowers, and I watched her fingers linger on his for just a moment too long. Then his eyes found me over her shoulder. You must be the husband. I am, I said, coming forward with my hand extended. Welcome to our home. We're so glad you could make it. Both dinners tonight are going to be very revealing. My wife shot me a warning look, but I just smiled. The doorbell rang again. My wife's head snapped toward me, confusion flickering across her carefully made-up face. Who is that? That would be my guest, I said, moving past her to the door. My heart hammered in my chest, but my hand was steady as I reached for the knob. Daniel stood frozen in the entryway, his polite smile beginning to crack at the edges. I opened the door to reveal Rebecca Chen, looking stunning in a burgundy dress, her dark hair pulled back in an elegant twist. Her eyes went immediately to Daniel, and I watched the color drain from his face. Rebecca. His voice came out strangled. What are you? How did you? Surprise, darling, Rebecca said, her tone sweet but her eyes hard as diamonds. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, and I caught the expensive scent of her perfume as she passed. Your friend here was kind enough to invite me. Isn't that thoughtful? My wife looked between all of us, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror. I'm sorry, who are you? I'm Rebecca Chen, Daniel's fiancée. She held up her left hand, where a substantial diamond caught the hallway light. Though I'm starting to wonder if that title still applies. Fiancée. My wife's voice cracked on the word. She turned to Daniel, and I could see the betrayal already setting in. You're engaged. I can explain, Daniel started, but Rebecca cut him off with a laugh that could have shattered glass. Please do explain, Daniel. Explain why you told me you'd be at conference meetings and hotel dinners all weekend. Explain why you never mentioned having dinner at an ex-girlfriend's house. She turned to my wife, giving her a smile that was all teeth. You are the ex-girlfriend, I assume? The one who's been texting my fiancé for 3 months. The room went silent except for something bubbling over on the stove. My wife's face had gone from flushed to pale, her hand still clutching the yellow roses like a lifeline. I think we should sit down, I said calmly, gesturing toward the dining room where my wife had set the table with our wedding china. The irony wasn't lost on me. After all, dinner's ready, and we have so much to discuss. I'm not hungry, Daniel said tersely, his corporate composure crumbling. He turned to Rebecca. Becca, this isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like you flew across the country to have an intimate dinner with an ex-girlfriend while lying to me about where you'd be. Rebecca's voice was controlled, but I could hear the hurt beneath the anger. What exactly should it look like, Daniel? My wife finally found her voice. This is insane. You had no right. She whirled on me. You invited his fiancée? Are you trying to humiliate me? No, I said quietly. I'm trying to save us both from wasting any more time on people who don't respect us. I pulled the folded papers from my jacket pocket and handed them to Rebecca. I found these on my wife's iPad. I think you should see them. Rebecca took the papers, her hands trembling slightly as she unfolded them. Her eyes scanned the printed messages, and with each line, her expression hardened. My wife lunged forward. Those are private. You had no right. You had no right to invite your ex to our home and throw yourself at him. I shot back, my own anger finally surfacing. You spent a week obsessing over this dinner. New dress, new makeup, new everything. For him. When was the last time you tried that hard for me? That's not fair. Read them out loud, Rebecca said suddenly, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. She thrust the papers toward Daniel. Read what she's been sending you. Let's all hear it. Daniel's face had gone from pale to grey. Rebecca, please. Read them, or I will. The silence stretched, broken only by my wife's ragged breathing. Finally, Daniel took the papers with shaking hands. He didn't look at them, he didn't need to. He knew what they said. Remember that weekend we spent in your dorm? I still think about it sometimes, he read, his voice hollow. My husband doesn't understand me the way you did. He paused, swallowing hard. I can't wait to see you. I've been counting down the days. There's so much I want to say in person. Stop, my wife whispered, tears starting to streak her makeup. Please stop. But Rebecca wasn't done. She turned to my wife, and the look on her face was devastating in its controlled fury. So let me get this straight. You invited your ex to your home, dolled yourself up like you're the one getting married, and spent months trying to seduce an engaged man. My engaged man. It wasn't like that, my wife protested weakly. We were just reconnecting as old friends. Friends don't text like that, I said flatly. Friends don't check their phones every 5 minutes waiting for responses. Friends don't criticize their spouses to make themselves look better. Daniel finally spoke up, and to his credit, he sounded genuinely remorseful. Look, I never encouraged this. I kept my responses friendly but distant. I thought, he glanced at my wife, then away. I thought she just wanted to catch up, nothing more. I never would have come if I'd known she felt this way. But you didn't tell your fiancé about the dinner at all, I pointed out. Why is that? He had no answer to that. The question hung in the air, damning in its silence. Rebecca pulled off her engagement ring and set it on the dining table with a click that sounded like a gunshot. I think I have my answer. Rebecca, wait, Daniel reached for her, but she stepped back. Don't. Just don't. She looked at me, and I saw a mixture of gratitude and devastation in her eyes. Thank you for inviting me. At least one person here has integrity. She walked to the door, her head high despite the tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. Daniel stood frozen for a moment, then grabbed his coat and followed her out, calling her name. The door closed behind them, and suddenly my wife and I were alone in the house that smelled of a dinner that would never be eaten, standing among the ruins of an evening that had destroyed everything. The silence after the door closed was deafening. My wife stood frozen in the middle of the hallway, the yellow roses hanging limply in her hand. Mascara tracked down her cheeks in dark rivulets, destroying the makeup she'd spent an hour perfecting. How could you? She finally whispered. The question was so absurd, so backwards, that I actually laughed, a bitter sound that surprised us both. How could I? Are you seriously asking me that right now? You humiliated me. You invited that woman here to embarrass me in my own home. Her voice rose, anger overtaking shock. Your own home. I walked past her into the dining room, looking at the elaborate table setting, the expensive wine, the candles that were meant to set a romantic mood. This stopped feeling like our home the moment you started planning a seduction dinner for another man. It wasn't a seduction. I just wanted to see an old friend. Stop lying. The words came out harder than I intended, bouncing off the walls. Stop lying to me. And stop lying to yourself. I read your messages. All of them. The ones where you told him you think about him. The ones where you compared me unfavorably. The ones where you made it crystal clear you wanted something more than friendship. She flinched like I'd struck her. The roses slipped from her fingers and scattered across the floor, yellow petals breaking off on impact. I never actually did anything, she said weakly. I never cheated. Only because he didn't take the bait. I pulled out one of the dining chairs and sat down, suddenly exhausted. You think that makes it better? You spent 3 months emotionally investing in another man. You neglected our marriage while you fantasized about your college boyfriend. The only reason you didn't physically cheat is because he wasn't interested. That's not true. Isn't it? I looked up at her, and I made sure she could see all the hurt I'd been hiding behind my calm facade. Tell me honestly, if Daniel had shown up tonight alone, if he'd reciprocated your feelings, if he'd suggested leaving with him, would you have stayed? The question hung between us. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. The fact that she had to think about her answer told me everything I needed to know. I love you, she said finally, but it sounded hollow. You love the security I provide. You love having someone who pays half the bills and does his share of the housework. But you don't love me the way a wife should love a husband. I stood up, my legs feeling weak. If you did, you would never have sent those messages. You would never have put this much effort into impressing someone else. So what now? Her voice was small, defeated. You're just going to throw away 7 years of marriage because I made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or accidentally breaking something valuable. You made a series of choices over 3 months. You chose to seek him out. You chose to flirt. You chose to emotionally disconnect from me while connecting with him. You chose to plan tonight. I moved toward the stairs, every step feeling heavy. Those weren't mistakes. They were decisions. Where are you going? To pack some things. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Maybe longer. I don't know yet. You're leaving me. The panic in her voice was real now, sharp and raw. You left me weeks ago, I said quietly. You just didn't bother to tell me. I climbed the stairs while she called after me, her voice breaking into sobs. Part of me, the part that had loved her for 7 years, wanted to turn back, to comfort her, to try to fix this. But the rest of me, the part that had spent a week watching her light up for someone else, kept moving forward. In our bedroom, I pulled out a duffel bag and started throwing in clothes. My hands moved automatically. Underwear, socks, shirts, pants. My toiletries from the bathroom. The phone charger from my nightside table. The photo of my parents from the dresser, but not the wedding photos. I couldn't look at those right now. She appeared in the doorway, her face blotchy and swollen. Please don't do this. We can fix this. I'll block Daniel, I'll delete his number, I'll do whatever you want. It's not about Daniel anymore. I zipped the bag closed. It's about us. About what you were willing to risk for the fantasy of someone else. About the fact that you can't even answer whether you would have stayed. I would have stayed, she insisted desperately. I would have chosen you. Would you? Or are you just saying that now because he rejected you? I faced her fully, and I saw her recoil from whatever expression was on my face. If tonight had gone the way you planned, if Daniel had been single and interested, would we be having this conversation? Or would I be sitting downstairs like an idiot while you disappeared with him? She didn't answer. She couldn't. That's what I thought. I picked up the duffel bag. I need time to think. To figure out if there's anything left of us worth saving. Of course there is. We have 7 years together, we have a home, we have nothing if we don't have trust and respect, I interrupted. And right now, I don't feel either of those things. I moved past her, and this time she didn't try to stop me. On the stairs, I paused and looked back. She was standing in the bedroom doorway, a silhouette against the light, looking lost and small. For what it's worth, I said, I really did love you. The you I thought you were. I just don't know if that person exists anymore. I left her crying in the hallway and walked out into the cool night air. My car sat in the driveway, and as I threw my bag in the trunk, I noticed the neighbors' lights on, curtains twitching. They'd probably heard raised voices. Small scandals in suburban neighborhoods spread fast. Let them talk. I was done hiding. 3 weeks later, I sat in a coffee shop downtown, watching the rain streak down the windows. My lawyer's paperwork sat in front of me, unsigned. Divorce papers. The end of 7 years reduced to legal jargon and property divisions. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca Chen. Coffee? I'm in town for the day. We'd stayed in touch after that disastrous dinner, 2 people bonded by betrayal. She'd ended things with Daniel that very night, refusing his calls and texts. He'd tried to explain, to apologize, but some breaks were too clean to repair. Sure, I texted back. Where are you? Look up. I raised my head to find her standing at the entrance, shaking rain from her umbrella. She looked different than that night, more casual in jeans and a sweater, her hair down, no armor of makeup and designer clothes. She looked real. Small world, I said as she slid into the seat across from me. Or maybe I asked your coworker Jake where you usually go for lunch. She smiled, but it was sad around the edges. I hope that's not creepy. No more than me inviting you to blow up both our relationships. You didn't blow anything up. You just turned on the lights so we could see what was already there. She noticed the papers. Is that what I think it is? I nodded, tapping the unsigned line. Can't quite bring myself to sign them. Still love her? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe I just love who I thought she was. I took a sip of coffee that had gone cold. What about you? Any regrets about Daniel? None. Her answer was firm, immediate. Finding out he'd lie to me about something like that? It would have been worse after the wedding. At least now I only lost 3 years and a deposit on a venue, not half my life and assets. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two wounded people finding unexpected solace in shared experience. My wife's been texting me, I said finally. Apologizing. Begging for another chance. She's started therapy. Sent me a 10-page letter explaining how she was having some kind of midlife crisis, how she never meant to hurt me, how she realizes what she almost lost. What did you say? Nothing yet. I've been trying to figure out if forgiveness is possible, or if I'm just afraid of starting over. I looked at Rebecca, this woman who'd become an unlikely friend. Is that pathetic? It's human. She reached across and squeezed my hand briefly. 7 years is a long time. It's okay to mourn it, even when you know it's over. Is it over, though? The question that had been haunting me for 3 weeks finally voiced. People make mistakes. People grow. Maybe she really has changed. Rebecca leaned back, studying me with those sharp, intelligent eyes. Can I tell you something brutal but honest? Please. She didn't change in 3 weeks. She got caught. There's a difference. She softened her words with sympathy. If you'd never found those messages, if I'd never shown up, where would you be right now? Would she have confessed? Or would she have kept Daniel as her emotional escape while playing the dutiful wife? The truth of it settled over me like a weight. She would have kept it secret. Exactly. She's not sorry she did it. She's sorry she got caught. And she's sorry she's losing the comfortable life she had with you. Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm. You deserve someone who chooses you first, not someone who only realizes your value when the other option disappears. I looked at the divorce papers again, and something shifted inside me. The fear that had been holding me back started to loosen its grip. You're right, I said quietly. I know. She smiled, this time with more warmth. For what it's worth, you did the brave thing. A lot of people would have just pretended not to know, lived in denial, let it eat them up inside. You confronted it head on. That takes guts. Or stupidity. Sometimes there's not much difference. I pulled out a pen, clicked it open, and held it over the signature line. My hand hesitated for just a moment, one last chance to turn back, to choose the familiar over the unknown. Then I thought about my wife's face when Daniel walked in. The hope in her eyes that wasn't for me. The effort she'd put into impressing him that she hadn't put into our marriage in months. The lies and half-truths and emotional distance. I signed my name. There, I said, feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Done. Rebecca raised her coffee cup. To new beginnings. And to having the courage to demand the love we deserve. I clinked my cup against hers. To not settling for less than we're worth. We sat there in the coffee shop as rain continued to fall outside, two people starting over, scarred but not broken. My phone buzzed again, another text from my wife, another plea I wouldn't answer. I turned my phone face down on the table. So, Rebecca said, breaking the silence. What's next for you? Honestly, I don't know. Figure out living alone. Maybe travel. My passport's been gathering dust for years. I felt a smile tugging at my lips, the first genuine one in weeks. What about you? Back to Seattle tomorrow. Throwing myself into work. Maybe getting a dog, I always wanted one, but Daniel was allergic. She paused. And maybe, Eventually, trying again. Not now, but someday. When I'm ready to trust someone again. That sounds healthy. It sounds terrifying, she corrected with a laugh. But staying stuck sounds worse. We talked for another hour, about everything and nothing. About the practical realities of divorce and breakups. About the strange freedom that comes from having your worst fears confirmed. About the future, uncertain and terrifying and somehow full of possibility. When we finally parted ways, she hugged me tight. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being honest when no one else was." "Thank you for showing up," I replied. "I couldn't have done it alone." I watched her walk away into the rain, umbrella up, shoulders straight. Then I gathered my papers, left a tip for coffee I'd barely touched, and stepped out into the storm. The rain soaked through my jacket immediately, cold and cleansing. I could have run to my car, but instead, I walked slowly, letting the water wash over me. Somewhere across town, Daniel was probably trying to salvage his career after a workplace scandal. My wife was in our house, her house now, she could have it, realizing that her fantasy had cost her reality. And me. I was standing in the rain, divorce papers in hand, everything I'd built for 7 years dissolved. But I was also free. Free from the doubt, from the watching and waiting, from the slow erosion of self-respect. Free to find someone who would plan elaborate dinners for me, who would light up when I walked in the room, who would choose me first every single day. I climbed into my car, turned on the heat, and pulled out my phone one last time. My wife's messages filled the screen. Apologies, promises, please. I typed one final message: "I'm filing the papers. Please have your lawyer contact mine. I wish you well, but I can't be married to someone who made me a second choice. Goodbye." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I deleted her number, started the engine, and drove toward whatever came next. The rain continued to fall, washing away the past, making room for something new. And for the first time in 3 weeks, maybe in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe.